Hello YouTube, Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you, as is usual. For this one we're going to return to Germany, and we're actually going to revisit the brewery where my kind of love of small brewed beer, craft beer, really started, and thanks to my good friend Daniel, who actually lives in the city where this beer comes from. So we're going to go to Bamberg in Germany and visit probably the most famous out of the 10 breweries in the city. So this time we're going to revisit the Schelenkerla brewery and have a taste of their Lagerbier. So this guy is called Schelenkerla Lagerbier, to give you its full name. So as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a brief history of the brewery, tell you a little bit about where the beer comes from and all of that sort of thing. But as I always say, if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to go on towards the latter part of the video and you will catch that particular segment, and I will try and put the little box up here again for you to click on. And as is usual with my videos as well, the link to the brewery website is in the video description there, along with the link to my previously done Schlenkerla beer reviews. I've already reviewed the Märzen, the Weizen, and also the Aecht Doppelbock, which was my 200th beer review video, so check those out if you are interested. But anyway, let's get on to the history of this brewery now. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, the Schelenkerla brewery is located in the historic town of Bamberg in Germany, which is just to the northwest of Nuremberg. And Bamberg is really cool because it went largely untouched during the war, so you're getting a true taste of old Germany. And if you do go and see this place, it really is one of the most beautiful cities that you'll find in Germany. It really is a really beautiful city. There's not much more you can say about that, in fact. But the city actually has a lot of wineries and monasteries that you can go around and visit as well. It's actually an old kind of religious city, if you like. There's so many churches around this place, and the monks all used to make beer and wine, and that's why the kind of city has so much prominence in terms of making alcohol. It's actually very, very close to the Franconia region as well. So the Brauhaus itself is actually located right in the centre of the old town, and it's a very famous and well-known brewery throughout Germany, in fact, the Schelenkerla brewery. Now, the brewhouse is in Dominikanerstrasse in the city, and the brewhouse was neighboured by the Dominican monastery. And the history of the tavern actually started with the formation of this Dominican monastery in the 14th century, and the first mention of a brewery was actually in the year 1405. But the Brauhaus building was apparently sold a number of times between 1405 and 1615, and during the 30 Years' War, which was 1618 to 1648, the building was destroyed and then rebuilt, and the brewery itself was actually founded in 1678, officially of course. But before this year, the reports are scarce, but there's far more documentation after this year of 1678 of the existence of the brewery in Dominikanerstrasse. Now, since 1678 there have been numerous owners of the brewery, and one of the very important owners was Johann Wolfgang Heller, and he took over the brewery in the mid 18th century, and he owned an old rock cellar for beer storage up on the Kalberg Hill just outside of Bamberg, and this storage facility was later moved to Stephansberg Hill, which is actually just inside of the town today. Now, over the course of the 19th and 20th centuries, the brewery was gradually moved, gradually to the location just above the ancient cellars of Stephansberg, and in 1877 Andreas Grasser became the new owner of the brewery. And this is the very important thing for the Schelenkerla name. Andreas Grasser actually had a slight physical handicap where his arms would move in an odd way as he walked, and the Franconian dialect for this was Schlenkern, the word for it, and the people soon began to refer to the brewery as Schelenkerla, despite the official name of the brewery being Hellebräu. Now, in 1907, Andreas' son Michael took over the running of the brewery, but by this time more and more people were visiting the brewery, and they actually leased a part of the former monastery from the Bavarian government, who had become the owners during the course of secularization. Of course, that was the Napoleonic policies in Germany which caused that. Many breweries, of course, were actually affected by this policy of secularization, the ones primarily that were owned by the monasteries. But in the 1920s, the buildings in Dominicana Klaus, and this included the chapel of the Dominican monastery, these were being restored by their Germanic Museum of Nuremberg in the 1920s, and in 1960 this restored part of the tavern was actually bought from the government by the company, and Michael Grasser's daughter Elisabeth actually and her husband Jakob Trum took over the running of the brewery, and in 1967 they in turn passed the brewery down to their son German Trum. Now, over the years they've actually modernised the brewing facilities in the Schelenkerla brewery, and they've opened up new rooms within the Brauhaus and added a beer garden in what was formerly the courtyard of the monastery. But in recent years the facade of the Brauhaus has also been modernised, and the famous historic ceiling painting in the monastery has also been restored. And when you actually go and visit the Schelenkerla Brauhaus, it's very well known for its sort of white it's got one of these really old things where it's a white building and then it's got all these kind of really intricate wood things, and if you go inside, it's a lot of the old mahogany and rosewood carved, hand carved furniture and things. It's a really, really beautiful and typically German place to go. And they actually have, if I remember rightly, they actually have one of these sort of shelves where you can put your glass in, and the brewery will wash your glass for you, but you actually rent a place for your glass, so you have your own personal sort of tankard or whatever when you go into the brew house as well. But it's a really, really awesome place to go and visit, but it's actually a little bit of a maze when you go inside and you're kind of walking around in it. It's quite difficult to actually find the beer garden through at the back and stuff, but really, really cool place to go and visit. And as I've said in my previous Schlenkerla beer reviews, Bamberg is a really beautiful city. One of the, like I say, it's a real taste of proper old Germany, which is quite difficult to find these days, of course. So go and check out Bamberg in Germany, and indeed the Franconia region and northern Bavaria as well. Really, really, really interesting part of the world. In fact, one of my favourite places. I'll definitely be going back there, and I enjoyed my time in Germany. But anyway, that's a sort of me rambling a little bit. But just to that's your history of the Schelenkerla brewery there, of course. But just to list the other beers you can get from these guys, out of the Rauch beers, you can get the Märzen, which is the brown. The one, a lot of these ones, I should point out, have a similar label where you've got a sort of yellow centre and then a nice coloured trim outside of it. So in that one, that's the Rauch beer ones. You have the Märzen, which has the brown trim around it. You have the Urbock, which either has a red or a gold trim to it. I have a bottle of that to review for you in the future. You also have the Weizen one, which is again is the yellow label, but this time has a green trim. And you also have a few special beers as well. On my 200th beer review, I reviewed the Aecht Doppelbock for you, which is smoked using of course oak wood. They burn oak wood to give the sort of smoky malts of the beer a really nice and unique taste. And obviously you have this guy, the Lagerbier as well, which is a Munich style Helles beer. So this guy on the Richter scale is 4.3% Munich Helles beer. So without further ado, let's get it open and get on with the tasting here. And I'll just bring up the camera actually while I remember and let you have a little look at the label of this guy. So as you can see, it's the sort of typical Schlenkerla label. This guy is a sort of light blue and white. You can see on there, was it Andreas Grasser, who was the one who had the physical handicap that gave the beer the name Schelenkerla, of course. There you can see him just with his stick and his tankard in his hand. He's obviously got his priorities right there. So as you can see, as I mentioned as well in the history part of the video, as you can see, Zeit 1678 when the brewery was founded. And you can see just on the top label there, Bamberg actually has a very famous Rathaus, or townhouse, if you like. And a lot of the Germans, I thought this was quite funny that they called it the Rathaus, where the politicians are, and the Germans didn't make the connection with the English word rat, and they always really thought that was funny when you told them that. But this is just the famous Bamberg townhouse there, and there's some really nice beautiful paintings on this place, a very famous part of Franconia, if you like. And this is the bottle cap on this guy here, and as you can see, this is Andreas Grasser again, and each of these bottle caps on these bottles in fact are different colours depending on what beer you get. So without further ado, let's get this guy open and get on with the tasting here. As I mentioned, this guy is a 4.3% Munich Helles style beer, so let's get it open and we'll get on with the tasting here. Oh, I didn't quite manage that very well in fact, so let's just get it off. Knock the label off, but as you can see, it's you've got a nice little bit of a smoky opening on it, so let's get it out into the glass and see how we get on. Can smell just a little bit of smoke off of this guy in fact as I open up, but of course that's the trademark of the Schelenkerla brewery. But obviously you can see it's a hell of a lot lighter in colour than the other beers that you'll get from Schelenkerla. So that's it poured, of course. So as you can see, it's a really beautiful, it's actually a very, very attractive looking beer in fact. There's quite a little bit of sedimentation just floating around in there. It's maybe been chilled just a little bit longer, but you do get that in the darker beers from them as well. You can see it's a nice sort of rich golden straw colour in fact, so you've got a nice sort of, you've got a nice one finger kind of white frothy head on it. There are some bigger bubbles in there as well. In terms of the aroma with this guy, it's got a very kind of sweet malty aroma. You can pick up just a little bit of smoky character into it. It is actually very, very faint, but there is just a nice little smoky character to it as well. But some nice sort of sweet and bready malts, I would say, as well. It's a really attractive smelling Helles beer, actually. But yeah, some nice kind of sweet bready malts, and there's a little bit of cereal spice in there as well, and there just is a tiny little hint of the smoky character that is the trademark of the Schelenkerla brewery. But yeah, definitely a little bit of smoky character when you take a bigger sniff of it. But yeah, there's also some kind of grassy and sort of floral aromatic-y hops in there as well. But it does have a nice sort of sweet kind of biscuity malt sweetness to it as well, which is really, really cool. But yeah, really nice smelling beer. You have that kind of, you can really smell that sort of smoky character that you get with the Rauch beers in this one too. It's really interesting. You can taste that smoke in there too. And as you can see, the head's just sort of fading down on this guy a little bit. But yeah, it's a really nice smelling beer, in fact. And it has a really nice taste to it as well, so you're picking up a lot of this kind of smoky character to it. Sorry about that, folks, my camera just actually cut out there, so I just had to pause it quickly and restart the recording there. But yeah, as I was mentioning with this beer review, you kind of get a little bit, you are getting a nice little taste of that smoky element that you associate typically with the Schlenkerla Brewery. But yeah, really in the flavour with this guy, you've got that nice underlying sort of smoky malt character that you associate with the Schelenkerla Brewery, but there's a nice really kind of sweet and bready malt character to it up front, and I think it does have a little bit of a kind of caramel underlying with some cereal. There is a little bit of a cereal flavour in there as well, a little bit of kind of spicy character in my opinion. But yeah, it's got a nice sort of smoky element. I think there is definitely that nice little bit of smoky element just underlying it, so you really are kind of getting quite a unique take on the Munich style Helles beer, of course. Well, on the finish, there's definitely a little bit of the kind of floral and grassy hop flavour that you expect with this guy. And it really, the smoky character is coming out just a little bit more and sticking into the aftertaste as it is with the sort of finish of the beer too. So it's definitely kind of quite a, it really is a quite a nice, just unique take on the Munich Helles style beer. In fact, it's a really well done one. So yeah, overall, it's got a really kind of nice and quite musky character to the flavour as well. So like I'm saying, it is a really quite unique take on the sort of Munich style Helles beer. It doesn't have the, I'd seen some people in reviews of this beer before had described it as a Dortmunder Helles, but it really doesn't have the sort of hoppy bitterness that you would associate more with the Dortmund Helles as opposed to the Munich Helles. The mouthfeel of this guy, I would say it's on the lighter side of mid-bodied, and it's got quite a soft carbonation to it as well. But it's actually quite a refreshing one too, and the sort of smoky character that you have with this beer as well kind of gives it that more. It makes it feel just a little bit fuller, so you are getting more of a mid-bodied beer than a light-bodied beer, as you would associate sort of with that you would normally associate with the Munich style Helles beers. Usually they are actually very light-bodied and easy drinking beers, but this guy definitely is a little bit more heavy going than that, and it's because of the mix you have between the sort of bready malts and the nice little bit of smoky character that's on it there. So, you know, it really is quite a unique take on this beer, and I would highly recommend you try it because it is very different from the other beers that you'll get from Schelenkerla. And of course, as I've mentioned quite a few times in my other beer reviews, the smoky style beer is their sort of trademark, if you like, which is always, you know, it's always interesting to try something just a little bit different from these breweries, and it was the case as well when I reviewed for you some of the different beers from Weihenstephan. Of course, they do a Pils and a Doppelbock beer, which is different from their sort of Hefeweizen beers that they're famous for. And this, again, is another kind of example of that. So I really would recommend that you give the Helles Lagerbier a try from Schelenkerla. It's a really nice beer. And of course, you do have just that nice little bit of trademarky smoky character that is what makes the Schelenkerla Brewery famous. So anyway, I recommend you give this guy a try. Go and visit Bamberg and of course the Franconia region of Germany if you get the chance to. Some really awesome beers in that region of the country. So I hope you found this beer review informative, and please let me know in the comment section your own thoughts on this beer. I hope you found my beer review informative and that you kind of agree with the analysis I'm giving you of this beer. So as always, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Thanks again for your support over my 200 or so videos that I've done now, and I'll catch you soon with another beer review. Cheers.